Beyond the Bell, Bloomberg's comprehensive cross-platform coverage of the U.S. market close starts right now.
And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day, the week, the month. Romaine Bostick, Taylor Riggs, Sonali Basak in for Caroline Hyde, counting you down to the closing bell. Here to help take us beyond the bell. Carol Massar in for Carol Massar. Tim Stenovec in for Tim Stenovec. Can't even say it. Bringing together our Bloomberg Television, radio, and YouTube audiences worldwide to parse what happened today and really this week, Carol. It's been a wild week.
Can you believe between the Chinese headlines, we had a Fed meeting, we've had big tech, the big five mega cap tech companies all reporting. I love this story in the magazine. I'm doing a self-promotion, but Gina Martin Adams.
We've got a lot of props.
I know, I've got props.
Can radio see the props?
They can't, but the story's by Gina Martin Adams of our Bloomberg Intelligence. She says, what happens after peak everything? And I feel like that discussion has come back into the markets. And we saw it maybe with Amazon, perhaps, despite still big numbers. There's that disappointing third quarter outlook for sales.
Yeah, that's certainly the company that is bringing down the NASDAQ 100 and bringing down the S&P 500 today. A down day, a down week, but not a down month. The Dow going to finish higher by about 1.2% for the month. The S&P 500 higher by more than 2.2%. And the NASDAQ on the month in the green by to the tune of 1% and some change.
And Carol, I try to one-up you with a prop of my own. The letter from Mr. Gary Gensler of the SEC with full pink highlights, Sonali.
He's writing
really,
to you?
Just a really, sort of detail, sort of that letter. Tim, you mentioned a good point of on the month, fairly decent. But Sonali, when you take a look at the week, just sort of the jitters, it really started Monday with China. I think a lot of people on Monday said, where is Gary? And Gary responds on Friday.
And then you get into that Robinhood IPO and that muted investor demand. On top of that China IPO crackdown, you've got to wonder how that IPO mutinous.
So here we get in the closing bells here. 34,932 on the Dow Jones Industrial Average, down about 146 points, 0.4% in the red on the day. S&P 500 down 0.5% on the day. The NASDAQ Composite down 7%. 0.7% on the day. But as Tim just mentioned, all of the major indices, for the most part, are in the green on a monthly basis. 6 straight monthly gains for the S&P 500. And then you have the Russell 2000. Well, here's the problem here. The Russell 2000, not only down for the day, it's down for the week and down for the month. It's been a pretty big underperformer, despite the fact that to start the year, it was actually doing pretty well, Carol.
Yeah, speaking of underperformance, check out the NASDAQ Golden Dragon Index, and that certainly feeds into one of the big stories, the Chinese crackdown by regulators on their Chinese companies, especially those big tech names. Flat on the day today, down 4% for the week overall, but that index is down more than 40%, about 43% from that February 16th high. So not a new story, but it certainly picked up some acceleration, Taylor, this week, and you can definitely see it in that index.
And you really highlight, Carol, and do a great job of that, sort of the worries in the market, how much of that feeds into the sector levels and the defensiveness that we see as we bring it back here within the U.S. For our radio audiences, we do, and the sector movers, the winners and the losers. I hate to say it, there are only a few winners because I see some red in my winners column. What it means is the defensiveness that Carol was talking about, household and paper products, food and staples, retail, real estate, right? Those are the sectors that are the best performers, up 0.4% to 0.8%. As we migrate lower and you see some of the losers, frankly, it's some of the bond proxies, it's the banks, right? It's energy, it's some of the retailers that when bonds are falling, these sectors typically, Carol, do not do well.
Well, I got a winner for you. How about Team is the ticker, Atlassian is the company. It's up almost 22% in today's session. What I call a WOA name. It's up about 40% so far here in 2021. Top in the NASDAQ 100. Stock soaring at what one analyst described as, quote, eye-popping revenue growth. 50% growth in subscription revenue. So that was a bright spot for them. Fourth quarter results also beating expectations. Another one, Dexcom soaring to a record high, top in the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100. It's now up about 40%, boosting its fiscal year revenue forecast, guidance beating the estimates. I mean, this is a company that William Blair said quarterly results show the company's position to sustain momentum for the next 5 years. Talk about an outlook. And then KLA Tencor, semi-manufacturer. We've talked about chips a lot this week, rightfully so, up about 34% so far this year, but you can see that stock up almost 9% in today's session, top in the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100. Company reported fourth quarter EPS and sales beat, so both top and bottom line. And Tim, they raised their first quarter revenue forecast. We look for outlook, and they gave an upbeat one.
Well, speaking of outlook and not an upbeat one, we got to talk about Amazon. You cannot talk about decliners without talking about Amazon today because, as I mentioned, bringing down the S&P 500 and NASDAQ 100. Amazon finished the day down by 7.56%. It missed on revenue for the second quarter, also guidance for the third quarter. The big question is the rush online slowing as vaccinations vaccinated consumers start to go out. Shares dragging down the major indices. Pinterest taking a tumble today, down more than 18.2%. It was down as much as 19%, the most in 16 months, all because of monthly active users. In fact, sales were pretty good. Revenue more than doubled.
What were those users doing on Pinterest? Has anyone ever?
Well, look, I will tell you, people said I would start using Pinterest when for my wedding, when I got married. I did not end up doing that.
But that's not
sustainable.
What do you do?
Look at
unless you're getting married every week, right?
But I was never a big Pinterest person. But it's a different platform than Facebook. It's a different platform than Twitter, and the advertisers are different too because it's about home decor, it's about cooking, and sales were actually pretty good. But the concern is with those users, if they're getting back out because they're vaccinated, Taylor, they're not spending as much time on the platform, and investors punishing stock as a result today. Are you guys on Pinterest?
Romaine is only on Pinterest if they've jackfruit crab cakes, so he can learn how to cook his vegan crab cakes that his wife tries to sneak to him.
Are you really a vegan?
No.
We're trying to convince him, and he's pushing back against his wife, and I'm on her team, and it's a huge debate. But let's talk about another big debate, Carol, in the market, and we do weekly yields because it's a Friday. This is a week when you had 2s, 5s, and 7-year bond auctions, each of $60 billion. You have a Treasury looking to raise $200 billion in the week, and we indeed migrate lower on the week as well. How much of this, of course, has been big demand on the front end, despite lower yields than we've seen in any of the previous auctions as of late? And how much of this, Carol, really brings in our theme of some of the jitters that we continue to see? We wake up Monday to headlines overnight from China. We wonder when Gary Gensler responds, and the jitters from investors that starts with Didi and ends with a halt on some of the Chinese IPO listings.
Taylor, I think the yield market and watching the Treasury market has been so important. We just had a market guest, and we were talking largely about equities, but it's like, what story is the Treasury market telling us? There are concerns. Everybody brings up inflation. We hear it, Romaine, from CEOs talking about higher prices and higher input costs, and yet the bond market still seems to be slower for longer, and giving the Fed some room. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's astonishing. I mean, you talk about yields, you talk about that real yield camped out right around 119 basis points with a negative sign in front of it, and you say that, what's the message, Carol? I don't know. I mean, the message to me is that things aren't good, but then you talk to a lot of the equity strategists out there, even some of the fixed income strategists, and they say, no, things are still fine. This will all just sort of sort itself out, and you get into this whole transitory debate, not about inflation, but the transitory debate about yields.
Yeah.
We're doing props today, and I have the latest issue of Bloomberg Business Magazine. It's Move Fast and Obey the Party. This could not be better.
Our radio audience is killing it.
Shanali, do you have a
radio
prop?
audience? We just put up the cover of Bloomberg Business Week magazine.
But this story could not be more perfectly timed, given the the height of China tensions. At least that's what it feels like between the United States and China. And the big question is to what extent does this hit U.S.-based companies? I mean, if you're a company like Apple, if you're a company like Disney, that does a lot of business. I see you there, Taylor. Does a lot of business.
What? We're giving
in China. You have to be wondering.
Okay, for
you
radio.
have to be wondering about what regulatory risk you face, right?
I have a question. Have either of you seen the Olympics? I'm told it's going on, but I can't find it anywhere.
No. For radio, our TV team just put up signs of neon green that said, "Help me."
It is a down day.
Tim,
we only have 90 seconds. I think you bring up a great point with China. I think you killed it on Wednesday when you brought up the idea of what is transitory to Mr. Jay Powell, and he defines it as prices not returning to levels that we had a month ago, but that they just won't rise as quickly as we have seen them. And so that's what he means when it's not transitory. We're just going to see a slower rate of price increases. Fascinated by that comment.
And on top of that, you have wage increases as well, Taylor, right? And next week, jobs. So is there going to be downward pressure on jobs as there's upward pressure on wages? How does this recovery work out at the end? How does the inequality story start to play into the broader way the U.S. thinks about this recovery?
Lyft, Uber, General Motors, Berkshire Hathaway about a week from now, all reporting earnings. So we'll see what they have to say. The earnings parade, Romaine, will continue, and we'll get more insight about the outlook, hopefully.
Yeah, and look, I mean, the earnings parade has actually been good, and even the outlooks, not necessarily bad. I mean, you talk about Amazon, Carol. I mean, you're talking about a company that basically said, we're going to grow at 20+%, and everyone sort of freaked out and said, oh, well, that's not the 40% we were used to. I mean, come on, get a grip.
Maybe our expectations are just a tad too high, everyone.
Lower your expectations.
And we have to remember that we're going to get back to a post-pandemic world, right? We hope to at some point. That means some of these growth levels. Hey, wait, I have one one more picture for you in the Pursuits. It's
More
actually
props.
alcohol-infused ice cream.
Oh.
Sorry for everybody on radio,
Yeah.
but
Did
it's
Were
basically...
you part of this story? Did you get the
Yes.
We've been eating it.
She
That's,
gets
We
all
had
the
to sample.
alcohol-related assignments.
See what kind of week it's been? All right, everybody have a great weekend. Great talking with you guys, TV,
All right, bye-bye.
on the TV side. That's going to do it for our cross-platform coverage on radio, on TV, and on YouTube. We'll see you again, same time, same place on Monday.